me! No, that can't be what's happening. What?
The day Naomi gave birth was the day everything went wrong. What was supposed to be the happiest moment of her life turned into a nightmare she would never escape. Because what she brought into this world was completely out of this world. The woman's name was Naomi. Her husband's name was Victor. They had been married for 5 good years, yet they had no child. At first, people showed them sympathy, but as the years passed, sympathy slowly turned into mockery. Family members began to ridicule them openly. Naomi and Victor were confused and heartbroken. They did not understand what they had done wrong. They went to the hospital many times, hoping to finally hear good news. But each time the doctor examined them carefully, the result was always the same. The doctor said nothing was wrong with either of them. There was absolutely no medical explanation for their problem. Still, the years kept passing and there was no child. They went to some of the best hospitals they could find, but in the end, nothing changed. The parents and family members on both sides were not happy about the situation. They kept advising them to leave each other. Some said Victor should find another woman. Others said Naomi should leave and marry someone else. Everyone believed the other person might be the problem. But Naomi and Victor never listened to them. In fact, they didn't even know that their families were secretly telling each of them to end the marriage. Instead, the two of them stood by each other. They chose to face the problem together. Their love for each other was strong, and nothing was going to separate them. Now you might be wondering, how did they end up in this situation? Let me take you back a little bit to where it all began, before Naomi got married. Naomi was the second daughter of an average family. She had an older sister named Grace. The two sisters were both very beautiful, but the only thing that made them different was their characters. Naomi was the kind of woman everyone loved to be around. She was sweet, loving, and hardworking. She helped with chores around the house without complaining. She was also very respectful to everyone she met. But her sister Grace was the complete opposite. She was rude and full of bad characters. Grace was the type of person people would describe as beautiful on the outside but ugly on the inside. Because of that, many people avoided her. Despite the way Grace behaved, Naomi still continued to love her deeply. She never treated her differently. Suitors often come asking for Naomi's hand in marriage, but each time that happened, Grace, the elder sister, felt deeply annoyed. It made her angry that men kept coming for her younger sister instead of her. But Naomi always rejected them. Naomi believed her elder sister should get married first. Out of respect for Grace, she kept turning the men away. But Grace was not helping matters at all. Her rude attitude kept driving the men away whenever they visited. Yet, each time it happened, she blamed Naomi for it. Little by little, her anger began to grow, and slowly, that anger started turning into hatred. She hated the fact that no man came looking for her, but they kept coming for her younger sister. Even rich and wealthy men showed interest in Naomi. Yet, Naomi continued rejecting them because of Grace. Sometimes, she even tried to turn their attention to her sister. She would say nice things about Grace, hoping one of them might choose her instead. Grace, on the other hand, kept showing her pick-me attitude. She would throw herself at every suitor, laugh at things they said that weren't funny, and talk down on her sister, spreading lies about Naomi. But none of it worked. The men saw her as insincere, even a little bit crazy. One by one, they left. But instead of fixing her own behavior, Grace blamed Naomi for everything. Then, as usual, Another man came for Naomi. His name was Victor. But this time, it was different. The moment they saw each other, they felt a strong, unexplainable connection. Something about him was unlike any other man who had come for her. He was also wealthy and handsome, yet there was something deeper Naomi couldn't explain. They fell in love before they even started talking. And this time, Naomi wasn't ready to let him go. Grace, however, began her little tricks to steal Victor's attention, but nothing worked. The more she tried, the more irritated he became. What type of girl is this? He kept asking himself. Meanwhile, Naomi and Victor's love grew stronger by the day. Eventually, they got married, leaving Grace behind. This infuriated Grace. Her hatred for her sister multiplied 3 times over. Naomi had always known her sister could be difficult, but she had no idea Grace hated her this much. Why does she always get everything? Grace thought angrily. I will make her life a living hell. Only a week after the wedding, Grace made her decision. She would move in with her sister and her husband. When they saw her at the doorstep with all her bags, they smiled, happy to see her, but something felt off. Why would she suddenly want to move in with us? Victor wondered silently. Still, she was there, and they had no choice but to welcome her inside. And that, my friends, was the moment trouble began. You see, Grace did not come to live with her sister out of love or care. She came with one purpose: to make Naomi's life a living nightmare. Victor was a big boy. He had money, he had cars, and his house was massive, with so many rooms that they would hardly see Grace around. But she wasted no time and began putting her plans into motion. She tried everything she could think of. She visited different native doctors who gave her strange powders, charm, and potions, but nothing worked. One day, she collected the powder that came with terrifying instructions. She was told to blow it on Victor's face, and he would fall asleep for 20 minutes. When he woke up, he would completely forget his wife existed. He would become obsessed with Grace, marry her instead, and drive Naomi out of the house. That same day, Grace took the powder and returned home. When she arrived, she found only Victor sitting in the living room. Grace quietly poured a little of the powder into her palm. Then she walked closer to Victor and suddenly blew it into his face. To her surprise, Victor immediately slumped on the couch unconscious. Her eyes widened with excitement. Finally, she thought it had worked. She sat at the other end of the couch and waited patiently. Exactly 20 minutes later, Victor slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Grace and smiled. Grace, you are here, he said calmly. Yes, she replied, smiling widely. How long have I been asleep? He asked. And where is my wife? Hasn't she come back? The smile on Grace's face disappeared immediately. Victor rubbed his face and looked at his hand. He noticed the white powder on them. What is this? He muttered. When did I start rubbing powder on my face? I should go wash this off. He stood up and walked straight to the bathroom. Grace was devastated. Once again, her plan had failed. The love between Victor and Naomi was so strong that nothing seemed able to destroy it. No lies, no manipulation, not even juju. But Grace refused to give up. If she could not make Victor abandon Naomi, then she would make the marriage collapse on its own. Once again, she returned to the native doctor. After listening to her, the man shook his head slowly. He told her the bond between Naomi and Victor was unusually strong. That was why all her previous attempts had failed. But there is one thing you can do, the native doctor said. You can make the woman barren. He explained that if Naomi could not bear children, The marriage might eventually break, and Victor might be forced to leave her. Then he gave Grace a small bottle filled with a strange liquid. He instructed her to secretly mix it into Naomi's food. Later that day, Naomi entered the kitchen to prepare a meal for everyone. When the food was ready, she placed it neatly on the dining table. "Grace, please wait here," Naomi said kindly. "Let me go call my husband. The food is ready." The moment Naomi left the room, Grace quickly brought out the small bottle, her hands trembling slightly as she opened it. Then she poured a few drops of the liquid into Naomi's food. Moments later, they all began to eat together. Suddenly, Naomi screamed. A sharp pain shot through her stomach. Victor jumped up in panic. But after a minute, the pain completely disappeared. They thought it was nothing serious. But from that day on, Naomi could no longer give birth. Victor and Naomi never understood what the problem was. But even after all these years, their marriage did not break. They stood by each other through everything. They were ready to face both good times and hard times together. Then one day, something unexpected happened. Naomi suddenly fell sick. She rushed outside and began to vomit. Victor quickly took her to the hospital. After running some tests, the doctors discovered something shocking. Naomi was pregnant. Victor and Naomi were overwhelmed with joy. They could hardly believe it themselves. They immediately called their family members and shared the good news. Soon, everyone gathered at their house to celebrate with them. Everyone was happy except Grace. "This is impossible," she said to herself. "How can this be happening?" Filled with anger, she rushed back to the native doctor and told him everything. The man was shocked. In all his years, he had never seen anyone break his course. After thinking for a moment, he finally spoke. "There is still one thing you can do," he told her quietly. He explained that when Naomi reached 3 months of pregnancy, Grace must secretly rub her stomach 7 times. Then he handed her a small bottle containing a strange substance. "If you do this," he said slowly, "when the child is born at 9 months, it will not be normal. The head will look like that of an alien, the body will be human, but it will have sharp teeth and claws. But there will be consequences." Before he could finish speaking, Grace suddenly stood up. She didn't want to hear anything else. All she wanted was to see her own sister suffer. Naomi was now 3 months pregnant. One afternoon, Grace walked up to her while she was sitting on the couch. "I am so happy for you," Grace said with a bright smile. "I can't wait to see you give birth. Let me feel the baby," she added softly. Before Naomi could think anything of it, Grace brought out a small substance that had been given to her. She gently placed her hand on Naomi's swollen belly. The first time, she rubbed it slowly. The second time, the third time. She continued carefully, pretending it was just a loving touch. Fourth, fifth, sixth. Finally, the 7th time. Naomi noticed nothing unusual. Grace then stood up slowly. "Your baby will be very beautiful," she said with a smile. Then she turned and walked away. From that day on, Naomi began to feel a strange pain she could not explain. It was not ordinary pain. It was deep, sharp, and unbearable. Sometimes the pain would become so intense that she would suddenly collapse. Each time it happened, Victor would panic and rush her to the hospital. But every time the doctors examined her, they found nothing unusual. All the tests came back normal. They even carried out several scans. The baby looked perfectly fine. So, What could be causing such terrible pain? No one could explain it. All Victor could do was watch helplessly as his wife suffered whenever the pain returned. It was now the 9th month, and the day Naomi had been waiting for had finally come. For months, she had endured unbearable pain, pain no one could explain. Now, everyone believed the suffering would finally end once the baby arrived. She was rushed into the labor room. Victor waited, his heart pounding in his chest. Inside the room, Naomi screamed in agony. The pain was worse than anything she had ever felt before. The nurses struggled to calm her as the doctors urged her to push. After what felt like endless hours, the baby finally came out. Then suddenly, the doctor screamed. The entire room froze. The nurses stepped back in horror. What Naomi had given birth to did not look like a normal baby. Its head was strangely shaped, slightly longer and smoother than normal. The skin was pale and almost grayish. Its eyes were wide, dark, and frighteningly deep. Its tiny mouth slowly opened, revealing rows of sharp needle-like teeth. And when it moved its little hand, the doctors saw long, thin fingers ending in small but terrifying claws. The baby let out a strange cry that echoed throughout the room. The doctors were so terrified they almost dropped the child. Outside the room, Victor heard the scream and rushed in immediately. The moment he saw the baby, he froze. Naomi also turned her head weakly and looked at the child. For a moment, neither of them could speak. Their minds were filled with questions. What kind of baby is this? How did this happen? Are we cursed? The doctors finally gathered the courage to clean the child and wrap it in a cloth. Then slowly, he handed the baby to them. The moment Naomi saw it clearly, her heart shattered. Tears poured down her face uncontrollably. I am cursed, she whispered to herself. So I was the reason we couldn't have a child all these years. And now, this is what I gave birth to. My marriage is over, she cried softly. Victor will surely leave me after this. But to her surprise, the moment Victor saw her crying, he rushed to her side. Even with the terrifying creature lying beside her, he still held her gently. Victor pulled her into his arms and tried to comfort her. Inside his own heart, he was also confused and afraid. He had the same questions running through his mind. But one thing was certain: he loved Naomi. And no matter what had just happened, he was not going to abandon her. Whatever the nightmare was, they would face it together. So he held his wife tightly in his arms, and the two of them began to cry together. They eventually left the hospital with a painful agreement. They would tell everyone that the baby didn't survive the delivery. They would say complications took the child's life. Then quickly, the two of them would search for a solution to the nightmare they were facing. But when they arrived home, something completely unexpected happened. The house was full. Family members from both sides were already there. They had come for a surprise visit to celebrate the birth of the baby. Everyone was smiling, laughing, and waiting excitedly to see the child. Among the crowd, Grace was there too. Of course, it was her idea. She had secretly contacted both families and arranged the entire surprise. How could she possibly miss such a wonderful moment? To her, this was the greatest day of her life. Naomi and Victor froze in shock. They were not expecting anyone. The plan they had made at the hospital had completely failed. Naomi stood at the doorway with the baby wrapped tightly in a cloth. Everyone in the house immediately noticed the bundle in her arms. One of the women rushed forward excitedly. "Let me see the baby," she said happily. She stretched out her hands to carry the child. But the moment she got closer and saw the creature inside the clothes, she screamed. The scream was so loud that it shook the entire house. She trembled backward and fell hard to the ground. "What? What is that?" she cried, pointing at the baby with trembling fingers. Everyone rushed closer to see for themselves. The moment their eyes landed on the child, the room filled with gasps of horror. "Demon!" someone shouted. "It's a demon!" another voice screamed. Panic spread instantly. People began running in different directions. Some covered their mouths in fear. Others shouted prayers loudly. The house turned into complete chaos. But in the middle of the confusion, one person remained calm. Grace stood quietly in a corner of the room. A wicked smile slowly spread across her face. She was enjoying every second of it. To her, this was the moment she had been waiting for. Victor and Naomi stood there in deep shame as everyone stared at them with fear. Yet, even in that painful moment, they never let go of each other's hands. Suddenly, Victor's family grabbed him roughly, pulling him away from Naomi. "You witch!" one of them shouted. "I knew it. How could Victor fall in love with a nobody? You must have charmed him. And now, look at this, giving birth to a monster." They insulted her, calling her every cruel name they could think of. Naomi's own family stood there silently. They said nothing, but their eyes were filled with disgust. They looked at her as if she had done something terrible. "How could a person give birth to such a creature?" they whispered. Slowly, they began to believe the lies. Naomi knelt down, crying, her voice shaking. "Please, believe me. I didn't do this," she begged desperately. But no one listened. Her father's voice cut through her pleas. "You are such a disgrace," he shouted. Her mother's voice followed, bitter and cold. "You were supposed to be a good girl. Or was it all an act? I cursed the day I gave birth to you." The rest of the relatives joined in, adding harsh words of condemnation. Naomi looked at her parents in disbelief. The people who should have believed her had turned their backs. She slowly turned to Victor, her eyes full of fear and desperation. "I didn't do anything to you, trust me. I would never do such a thing. I don't know how this happened." Victor stood there, frozen, his face pale, his hand clenched. He didn't know what to think, what to say, or what to do. He avoided her gaze, unable to respond. Naomi sank to her knees, crying uncontrollably, her heart breaking in pieces. Then she turned to Grace, her only hope. "Sister, you know me. Please, tell them I am innocent. Help me." Grace's lips curled into a cold, cruel smile. "You are a witch," she said softly, "and you deserve everything that is coming for you." Naomi felt the world collapse around her. Her eyes streamed like waterfalls, tears falling endlessly. Suddenly, they pushed her out of the house. "Get out and never come back," they shouted. They shoved her roughly as if she were not human. With nowhere to go and no idea what to do, Naomi fell to her knees in the middle of the street. She buried her face into her hands and cried, letting the world hear her sorrow. Victor stood frozen, torn in two. On one side were his family, shouting, accusing and demanding he abandon Naomi. On the other side was Naomi, the woman he loved more than anything, trembling, broken, and innocent. His heart ached with confusion. He wanted to defend Naomi, to hold her, but his family's voice were loud, angry, and relentless. For a moment, he felt trapped in a cage of loyalty and love. If he chose his family, he would betray the woman he had promised to protect. If he chose Naomi, he would face the fury and shame of the people who had raised him, who had stood by him all his life. Victor looked at Naomi's tear-streaked face. Her eyes pleaded for him to stand with her. And at that moment, he knew the choice wasn't really about them. It was about who he truly was and who he was willing to be for the woman he loved. Victor finally tore his gaze away from the shouting crowd and ran to her. He pulled Naomi into his arms, holding her tightly, shielding her as best as he could. Even with the chaos around them, even with the terrifying sight of the baby, he whispered, "I'm not leaving you, Naomi. Whatever happens, we'll face this together." Naomi clung to him, crying, her sobs blending with his quiet resolve. For the first time that day, amidst pain, betrayal, and fear, there was a flicker of hope.